wind. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. We have the Secretary of Commerce for the state of Rhode Island, Stefan Pryor.
Good to be with you, Josh.
Glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Okay, how's the state of Rhode Island doing?
It's doing great. We're so pleased. We're at an all-time employment peak at 499,200 employees. That is the highest recorded number, and that's for the second month in a row. That is to say, we beat last month's record high, and we're seeing other trends that are positive. What's exciting is that the construction job growth, which is a nice indicator of economic health, showing that physical projects are happening. For the fiscal year ending in June, we had the highest rate of job growth in America in construction, and then again in July we had the third highest rate in the country. These are the kinds of signs you want to see when an economy is picking back up. We restored all the jobs lost during the Great Recession, and we're starting to see the kinds of jobs that we're hoping for with the arrival of some of these new companies and some of our existing Rhode Island companies growing.
Well, we've teased you in the past about cranes. You have 2 cranes in downtown Providence right now.
Roaring cranes.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, so on opposite sides of Canal Street.
So
they really are rivals.
Yeah, that's right. Talk about those projects real quick.
Sure. We've got the Commons, which is a residential project, over 160 units of residential, being built right next to the Providence train station with all of its access to the Northeastern Corridor. Really important project. And then we've got the Edge. So that's Canal and Smith Street on the one hand, it's Canal and Elizabeth Street on the other, which the Edge is a residential development that isn't affiliated with a university, but it is dormitory style or university residence style stuff that they're producing, and that's a couple hundred plus units that are going up there.
And that's no parking, that is really driven for college students.
Exactly. That is ground up construction, and it's right in the urban core, so it doesn't necessitate new parking. Exactly right.
And then right here out the window, we've got Joe Paolino's project.
You know it.
And that project is cooking along. We hear the construction every day here.
That's right.
And that's a project that got some rebuild money and got some historic tax credits.
There are 2 different Paolino projects that have gotten historic tax credits. There's a microlofts project and a hotel project, both under Paolino properties. There's 27 different real estate projects, many of which are in Providence, but many of which are not. Actually, there are projects all over the state. One worth noting that's industrial. This is a manufacturing plant, R&D and manufacturing plant. That's Finlay's Coffee and Tea in North Kingstown. That's the Quonset complex. That's going up very rapid fire. You don't see the crane from here at the studio. You don't see the crane in Providence, but heavy equipment making that happen as well.
And that's the old Autocrat Coffee Company being acquired by Brits.
It's the parent company actually having acquired Autocrat. Instead of evacuating the state, they doubled down. They're creating potentially up to 73 jobs with an R&D center and a pilot plant for a whole other product line, not Autocrat. We're excited that our storied Autocrat, our treasured Autocrat coffee syrup stays here.
This was a big day for Eclipse coffee syrup.
That's right.
Just for reference. Tell me what's been frustrating you. What are the projects that you just go, come on, you guys, get this thing over the top?
You know, there are projects that ebb and flow. It's natural. Projects, even after they secure approvals from us in the government with our investments.
Pratachani's got one across from the convention center.
Thankfully, they've done all the demolition, taking that old Brutalist building down.
It only took about a year or 2 to tear the building down.
Well, from some people's perspective, decades, right? And I actually think that is the point, Josh, which is that some of these projects had been welled up with developers who wanted to do them, but for a smaller strand of financing that they needed, a little bit of financing that we needed to put in it to catalyze the whole project, to create, dozens of construction jobs in one instance, hundreds in the aggregate, thousands in the aggregate, and permanent jobs. We've got 5 different hotel projects going on across the state. Actually, there's a hotel project at the airport in Warwick. There's a hotel project that's going to eventually go up next to the Wexford complex in the Innovation and Design District, the 195 district.
Right. So I already had to separate you 2 earlier. It was looking like a little bit of an MMA fight. Gary Sass, former director of administration, has been on a number of times, and he chides, I think is the appropriate word for...
He's earned the right to chide anybody if he wishes.
That's right. He's got chiding ability on the issue of using these level of incentives for as he describes them, and I think there's some truth to it, minimal job creation, permanent job creation, hotels and apartment buildings in which they get rebuild money. Is that the best use of resources?
Well, that's actually there was a couple of erroneous points in there. I don't attribute them to Gary. Quite honestly, Josh, I attribute them to you.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
attribute the errors to you. But in all seriousness, first of all, none of the hotel projects to date are at least substantially using the Rebuild Rhode Island tax credit. They're using tax increment financing,
Okay.
which means that the main thing we're doing, in some cases exclusively across the 5 projects, is that we are pledging the future hotel taxes and only the state's portion of the hotel taxes.
For the
so
TIF.
there also are for the tax
And
increment
none of
financing.
those 5, just to make sure that I am completely wrong,
Yeah.
none of those 5 are receiving any rebuild dollars.
I think there may be some modest rebuild. Under the rebuild statute, there's a sales tax
So
exemption.
my
on building materials. So
incorrectness-
you're largely wrong as compared to your typical completely wrong.
Yeah, thank
But no, but the hotel
It's
tax.
always good to come on a live broadcast and insult the host. That is not a
You're
winning.
entitled to
that is
insult
not
me
a-
right back.
That is not a
But-
winning strategy.
But
Tony, lock the door.
the pledging of future taxes ensures that we don't actually make the incentive happen
Yeah.
until the project is successful. And I will also quibble with this aspect of your otherwise terrific set of observations. Hotel jobs are really important jobs. Hotel jobs are accessible to all kinds of people with different skill sets and Rhode Islanders of different walks of life with different forms of preparation for jobs. They're actually quite important, and they're reasonably job intensive. The residential projects help in that residential in the downtown makes a downtown more vibrant. It makes it 24/7 rather than in the conceptual sense, tumbleweeds in the streets. Businesses want to be in vibrant urban cores today. The suburban office parks of old are no longer. So having baby carriages, having dogs being walked, having the kind of 24/7 life, that is what's appealing. So we're creating construction jobs when we're doing these residential
Right.
projects, but we're also paving the way in that sense. And remember, all of these payments, that is to say, these investments, these incentives, they don't happen until there's already people being hired and paying taxes. They don't happen until the project is built, there's a certificate of occupancy, and then it's paid out over 5 years. In other words, there are inherent accountability procedures to ensure that the public gets what it bargained for.
So most of these projects are layered with a number of different incentives.
Often they are.
Including tax stabilizations. And these are not all fall
Those are
under
obvious.
your domain. But if we'd gone tax stabilization crazy, it used to be, back in the good old days, somebody got 10 years. And in fairness, maybe you needed 12 because the first 2 years might be the construction period. It was a net gain because they were going up from where they were.
Right.
But now we're into 20 years and we've got layers on top of layers. Is there a danger that the only way anybody is going to come to Providence, Rhode Island, or to Rhode Island is, I need this, this, and this?
I think we should all be caution-oriented when it comes to any tax incentive, including municipal tax stabilization agreements at that local level. I do think we need to be very careful, but a few observations. First of all, cities like Providence are getting better at this. Not to say that it's by any means perfect, but there are formulaic administrative procedures that are equitable, meaning that anyone who approaches and has an approved project gets this particular form of tax treaty in the 195 district and in the capital city district. In both instances, so when a deal now comes to 195, you can actually get that particular form with a step-up method of taxation regarding property taxes. Whoever you are as a developer, whatever your parcel. That's number one. And I think that's better because one of the concerns is the one-off nature of the deals.
Yep.
Not the only concern, but one of them. I'd say the second point is this, at least as pertains to the state, when we do our investments, our incentives, several things are happening that we hope the municipalities will piggyback. We always require the developer to prove the need.
Yeah.
How do they prove the need? They show us a project budget, a pro forma, they have to show a gap. The project will not, as they say, pencil out. It will not be financeable unless that gap is filled, number one. And number two, even if you don't believe that, even if the level of scrutiny that we provide, which is a heck of a lot more than is found in most jurisdictions in the United States, even if you don't believe that, very often for a real estate deal, we'll take a return. And Josh, I don't mean just that we'll get some taxes
Yeah.
that are, that too. we actually put ourselves in the structure of the deal so that if it's very successful, at high levels of success, the state actually sees a direct return as if it's an investor. Those are ways to ensure that the developer has a mutual interest with us in making the project work.
So in Massachusetts, they've created in the Fall River area, looking like around this first step, 1,800 jobs for Amazon. And it looks like if you add all the incentives together, it's about $10 million. So an expensive, but an economically depressed area.
Yep.
Simultaneously, Amazon's putting 900 higher paid jobs in Boston, new construction, et cetera, and getting 0.0 in incentives.
Right.
How do we get to that point? That
Well,
seems like the where you want to be, which is,
yeah.
yes, there's an economically depressed area and you want to create jobs that match up with a skill set where you can put more people to work in a place that's historically had high unemployment, but up in Boston where the economy's cooking along and there's a ton of talented people, let them pay full boat.
The fact that the economy is cooking along is the point, and I think you're leading in that direction, and you're right, Josh. The Massachusetts economy is so hot it's even overheating in some places. The asking rates for commercial office in parts of Boston and Cambridge are too high, and actually we might be the beneficiary if we play our cards right. We work it every day, to be honest with you. So Massachusetts is in a privileged position. They have earned the right to withhold incentives even under certain circumstances. Now, when a GE comes along, by the way, they're lavish with the incentives, lavish with the incentives. But so they have. But I would say another thing. Amazon is a logistics-heavy company. They are in the business, to state the obvious, of shipping. That's what they do. They produce almost nothing. They distribute. What are they reliant upon? Roads and bridges. What did Rhode Island not have until recently? A road and bridge improvement program. So we had infrastructure that was weak and even among the worst conditions in the country.
The Braga Bridge might have been a 50-year project.
Now we may be a more attractive place, is my point.
Is there an opportunity to piggyback on their growth? And listen, we all know that's not going to be 1,800 jobs. That could be 10,000 jobs in 5 years. That we start to build some facilities here in warehousing and in logistics that is able to feed into Amazon.
Oh, I do think so. Amazon in particular.
Are you seeing any projects in that realm?
Not per se, but I will say that we're always in dialogue with everybody. So if there's a major corporation that you could imagine could be active in this region,
you look at Highland, right?
But I will tell you that
there's a half dozen or a dozen companies tied to CVS. So if Amazon's down the road and functionally we're the next closest place with a workforce, that ought to be a significant opportunity.
We are always in conversations of that kind. We are in active conversations with some of Rhode Island's biggest companies about their supply chain and inherently about their distribution and logistics operations. But I will say this, it's slightly off the precise point, but it's related. When GE landed its headquarters in Boston, we were, by all accounts, a runner-up as a state, which is very good for our state. We were still emerging from the recession. We were still not yet a player on the scene.
The Atlanta Falcons
GE Digital
are not feeling good about that situation. Let's talk about GE. That's one of the points we want to talk about. A company in a little bit of distress right now. I believe it is the worst performing in 2017 S&P 500 stock. In a market that's been up and away, it is pretty flat, if not has shrunk a little bit. They've jettisoned their longstanding CEO, and it's got to make you a little bit nervous about all the flux at GE and what that means for facilities and projects and new initiatives.
GE's been around for a little while. As a matter of fact, GE was co-founded by Thomas Alva Edison. GE is I believe, Josh, the only company originally listed on the Dow that still exists. GE is a very durable enterprise. Now that doesn't guarantee it.
Yeah, we're not.
But they're doing pretty well.
Creating a premise that they're going to go away.
They've managed through multiple cycles.
Berkshire Hathaway just withdrew all their investments.
Where I'm headed with this, though, is that they have managed to rethink themselves repeatedly over multiple corporate lifetimes. GE is doubling down on digital. That's what they view as the future of the company. And to the extent that what you're asking is what are the implications for Rhode Island, because that's what we care about, the implications I think are very good, honestly. that all of the trends are that their new CEO was part of the digital reinvention process, that the top officials that we deal with are very well positioned in the new era post-Immelt. And I should say we're grateful to both eras of GE because they've been extremely good to us.
Yeah,
but they are investing in digital, and that's where we are. That's the unit we have.
The institutional investor who ultimately led to the downfall of Jeff Immelt has asked specifically to see the refocusing to their core business and to abandon, was one of their issues, the digital initiative, because they couldn't see the capitalization in the short term. And as you know, unfortunately, too often institutional investors are about this quarter, next quarter, et cetera, not necessarily the long term of 5 years down the road.
Common sense wise, to be an industrial company in modern America, in the modern world, you need to implant sensors. You need to do the IoT thing in order to, in fact, be competitive industrially. I think the only bet that makes sense.
You're confident.
I believe in their vision for themselves, and I also think that we are very well positioned within it.
You're supposed to be at 100 jobs at some point in the next year?
Yeah, and they've exceeded their thresholds. The threshold that they most recently hit was that they were to be at 50, and I believe they are at around 51, 52, 53 jobs.
They blew that number away.
They did very well, and they are moving ahead with hiring. They're in constant consultation with our universities, and they have postings up. Take a look at Johnson & Johnson, which, by the way, also ahead of anticipated levels, is hiring. I think they themselves are getting close to around 50 hires. Take a look, by the way, at Ivory Ella, which relocated from Connecticut to Rhode Island, to Westerly, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
They're hiring up a storm, I think, whatever the category of job, even if they're in or out of our incentive program, I think they're around at 60. United Natural Foods, which is, of course, in Providence, but also opening a Lincoln facility. They're over 90. I think they're at 95 hires since we made the deal with them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of hires that are occurring as a result of these relatively modest investments in the scheme of the world that are accountable investments, meaning they happen when the jobs occur and they're paying taxes. And here's another point about them, Josh. The nice thing about all of these jobs that are being created subject to the incentives is that better than 50% of them are middle-income jobs. They're in the $40,000 to $75,000 range salary-wise. So we're helping to build out that middle class is one definition, middle-income, middle-skill job set that's so valued, not just here in Rhode Island, but across the country.
What's the biggest stress point for you? Where are you not performing at a level that you'd like to be? I mean,
well,
everything can't be perfect and rosy over there at Commerce.
I speak of this truly with admiration for the media organization you've set up and the digital media world in which we all live, social media world. It's harder to get the word out.
Yeah.
We are on a roll.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of the matter is we are on a roll. 27 real estate deals since we created our programs, 17 job expansion and relocation deals, companies in Rhode Island that are expanding. I've named several of them.
Yeah.
Companies that are arriving here. You know, we were not that kind of story, even a little general recession, and now we have the fastest growing construction job rate. What I mean to say is we've got to find the way to sustain that momentum and to really invest and to get these things going so that we can survive the next recession that is inevitable.
If you won't rain on your parade, let me rain a little bit. I'm going to look up, and I'm not looking at the eclipse. I'm looking at the Superman building. 4 years.
I'm surprised you could see past the cranes in the sky.
There's no cranes on that over there. 4 years. The tallest building in the state of Rhode Island has been vacant. It's a little bit of an embarrassment. I kind of feel like we've lived in the house a long time, and there's that hole in the plaster, and we all just kind of ignore it. But that's a big hole in the plaster. Where are we with Superman?
Let me start with this. I think it's a very important building. There are people who have differing opinions. There are people who argue that we should take it down, that we, whoever we are, should take it down. There are people who think it's not representative of the modern era. I want to beg to differ with that first. I think it matters, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it matters. It's in our cityscape. It's in, you watch Channel 12 News, you spiral out from the image of it. You go to the sandwich shop on North Main Street and you pop open a bottle on a bottle opener that has the image of it.
Right.
What I mean to say is it really matters. It's part of us, and I think it's a gorgeous building and it is reusable.
Yeah.
And having said that, we are actively working with the building ownership and with their other partners on some end users, meaning some tenancies,
Yeah.
meaning some commercial tenancies, and we're having some very good conversations.
So-
Until the deals are done, they're not. But we are having some very good conversations, so I'm optimistic. That doesn't mean that these things will happen overnight, not at all, but we believe in the project and we're working very hard on it.
So it was about 18 months ago, I want to say, that PayPal was in the mix. Is there any life to that?
It's very hard for me to speak to any specific transaction, but I can tell you that in this case, because it's been out there is life to our conversation with PayPal, yes.
Life to it in that it could potentially be located
I'm
there?
not going to get into that level of detail with anyone that's just even in circulation that way. But we talk to these companies. Whenever we talk to them about multiple possible properties, often multiple possible cities or towns.
Yeah.
Because there are different types of operations they're considering. Sometimes it's industrial, so they need a horizontal physical plant.
Right.
Sometimes it's an operations center where they need to be under a certain kind of configuration and with a certain kind of floor plate. Sometimes it's a straight up commercial office. That's what would be a good fit for
If you had
Superman.
if you had a magic wand, what is the economic development project that you would wave at to jumpstart and make happen?
Honestly, it would be the 195 corridor.
Yeah.
And it is happening.
Yeah.
Now, I want to note this ultra fast. You kind of gave me the chance to, in all seriousness. J&J isn't just hypothetically coming to Rhode Island,
Yeah.
Johnson & Johnson. They didn't want to wait for anything new to happen in the 195 district.
Right.
They decided, we want to get to that district. We want to be right there across from the new nursing education center at the old power plant at South Street Landing and near Brown's Medical School. And they went to One Ship Street, which is essentially across the street from where the
building.
Wexford complex is.
Right.
And they're in there and they're hiring away and it's incredible. And we are going to build that Wexford Innovation Center, 191,000 square feet, 60,000 of which will be incubator or accelerator space under Cambridge Innovation Center. Every single day there's remarkable progress happening on that, meaning a lot of people working very hard and no significant hitches. So that will get in the ground. But what you're asking me, look, I go to sleep at night and wake up every morning in that jewelry district, in the 195 district. I care about that neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's where I live. That's what we're trying to emphasize. And I will tell you, it really matters that it becomes the innovation and design district. The innovation
What's
and design
taking so
district.
long? I mean, Wexford's 4 years.
Now routine work. I mean, I can't speak to 4 years. Thankfully, we've been working for a couple of years on most of these
Yeah.
projects, even when they started conceptually.
Yeah.
And in the Wexford case, the intensive work is about a year of intensive work, meaning
You've
down
shoveled
to
enough.
agreement.
You've shoveled enough money at these poor guys. Can they not spend it?
And I want to thank you for your advocacy and your diehard support of all of that investment.
No,
in,
we have
in
a
that
different
catalytic
role.
project.
We actually have a
In that catalytic-
responsibility
in that
to
catalytic project.
unveil some maybe
And-
slight exaggerations of
and-
98 to 1,000 jobs.
By the way, we disputed your claims about the exaggerations, which you did not run on your site. I have to say it if you're going to bring it up.
Listen,
I have to say it. You did
Steph,
not run the statement.
We will run
to
it.
the
Do
contrary.
you want us to run it tomorrow
I
with an
don't.
editorial note?
I'm
Because
happy.
the editorial note is going to say the
I'm
following is false.
Happy for this opportunity. Just because you brought it up, I brought it up. But in general, I want to thank you for following development with intensity because it matters to the point about getting the word out. And I would say, your question was what's taking so long, quote unquote. It's really not. For a project of this complexity, ground up construction
Yep.
on formerly highway-related land that doesn't have major commercial development on it. This will be the first thing.
Yeah.
This will be the first shovel in the ground, quite literally. It's going very well, and there are a lot of different partners. The Wexford organization itself is a multi-component set of
very
partners.
complex.
And then there's multiple tenancies, CIC and Brown, and then there's things like the J&J development across the street where we are working with them separately. These are a lot of things to coordinate, and thankfully the professionals involved, they're doing a wonderful job.
Let's talk about the Paw Sox. Can't really ever come visiting here. We love the Paw Sox. The Worcester City Council has passed a resolution which has the force of a dust bunny, with no debate on an 8-1 vote. I'm not sure if that should be a huge stress point. Kate's got the speaker on, I think, this week on Thursday. Conversations with him. You know, he's still waiting for where we're going on this thing. The Senate president has, and his leadership has said a number of different things relative to hearings or not hearings, and I'm not sure anybody quite knows what the game plan is. Where are we on this project?
As to legislative leaders' decision making, I honestly don't know. It's above my pay grade, and that's for them to work out.
Sure.
And it is truly at their discretion, their jurisdiction on whether and when they hold hearings and progress the legislation. I will say that, look, I understand Rhode Islanders' skepticism about any deal where public money is being invested. I think we've worked very hard to ensure that we are good guardians of public investment with our various projects. The PawSox framework for a deal needs to be fleshed out, needs to be scrutinized in the legislature. It is the kind of deal that merits the kind of look that it would get if there were legislative hearings, which is to say, there are a lot of bad stadium deals out there where I think the public is getting fleeced, where there's no chance of seeing a return on that investment that exceeds the public's investment. And in this case, actually, it's the opposite, where I think we will see return on the investment to the point where, in effect, it won't cost anything for the public.
So in Massachusetts, and we've taken an editorial stand sort of advocating the Massachusetts approach to it, which is, listen, there's an appropriate role for government to pay for maybe land acquisition and certainly for roads and infrastructure that have a common good, not just for an individual small group of owners. And we don't have to talk about what their personal resources are, but relative to, listen, land acquisition is significant, roads and infrastructure improvements are significant. That seems like a public role.
Mm-hmm.
Building a baseball stadium seems less of a public role, and in contrast to Massachusetts, and in Worcester, legislative leaders in Massachusetts have said, very good economy, very good. We're not spending money on this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty emphatically.
Yeah.
So, I guess there's been frustration. We've been curious as to why isn't that the focus?
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't, hey, listen, guys, we love to have you stay in Rhode Island. We appreciate everything you've done. It adds to the fiber of our life. But you guys are worth $8 to $10 billion.
Mm-hmm.
We'll buy the land. We'll do the roads. Let's get moving on this thing.
I think a couple things. First of all, I wish Worcester good luck with that kind of argument. We'll see if that's the way the dialogue actually evolves. That's a bargaining position. Look, that may be their ultimate position.
Well, they have
position.
not varied from that in the state of Massachusetts.
You're correct about that.
Gillette.
But I wish them luck.
Fenway, New Boston Garden with the.
I wish them luck with that approach. Second, I think that our transaction, yours is I think a legitimate method of going about such a stadium deal or ballpark deal. But I would say another legitimate approach is to say we will not invest the quote unquote lost revenue, which is a common argument that you hear from teams when they're threatening leaving. You're going to lose these baseball player salaries. You're going to lose these corporate taxes. You're going to lose X, Y, and Z. Look, that may be true, but we wanted to preserve those in their entirety. And all we would offer, in effect, from our side, from the state side, was the incremental investment, the incremental increase in taxation that the state would see, or the equivalent value. That's what we succeeded with. That is one of the best bargains in baseball park scenarios. Now, having said that, there is a legitimate dialogue still to be had in the legislature.
We've got to figure out a way, because based on that negotiations, I've got to come over and bargain with you guys on something for Go Local. You are out of time because you need to go to a 195 commission.
I do, sir.
I want to thank you so much for coming over. Congratulations on the success. We're
Thank you,
going to
Josh.
continue to keep a close eye on commerce, and appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.